All right. Let's see what topics we got for today. As our founding fathers were discussing how our newly created nation would be led, many feared the idea of a president as it opened up the possibility of our government returning to the monarchy as one elected official could have too much government power. Now, me personally, knowing that the front runner for president was a 6'6" man that led a bunch of scrubs to beating the greatest army in the entire planet, I'd be pretty scared too. So, the founding fathers came up with a simple governing principle: separation of powers. Now, you may be asking, what powers are we talking about here? Government can be divided into three simple ideas: making laws, executing laws, and interpreting laws. The power of making laws was given to the legislative branch. The power of executing laws was given to the executive branch. And the power of interpreting our laws was given to the judicial branch. Now I can hear you asking, who's running these branches? And I'll tell you.
The legislative branch is run by Congress, which is separated into two houses: the Senate, which has 2 representatives per state, and the House of Representatives, which represents each state based on its population. The executive branch is run by the president, and the judicial branch is run by the United States Supreme Court.
So, the separation of powers involves the 3 branches: legislative, executive, and judicial. Now, you might be wondering, hey, 3 is a pretty big number. How are you gonna keep all these branches in order? Well, I'm glad you asked. That's why there's a system called checks and balances. Yay! So, what are checks and balances? It's not that hard of a concept to grasp, but here's the definition if you needed to know it. So basically, each branch is subject to a number of constitutional checks and restraints by the other branches. This ensures that no branch will be more powerful than the other. It equalizes the power between all 3 branches. So basically, the system of checks and balances makes it more difficult for the government to act in ways that'll harm the rights of citizens. So why did we ever create checks and balances? Well, our founding fathers feared that a strong centralized government would provoke the rights of the people, like King George III did. Kind of screwed up. But that would eventually lead to tyranny, and we don't want that here in America. So we made checks and balances. One document that introduces a system of checks and balances would be the Federalist Papers. One of the writers, James Madison, explains how this system, implemented in a centralized government, will control the abuses of power. So now, some examples. We have the 3 branches right here. We got legislative, executive, and judicial. So, the executive branch has the power to appoint judges for the judicial branch. This directly influences the judicial branch because they're determining the judges. Another example would be Congress, aka the legislative branch, wants to make a law. The president has the authority to veto this law. But Congress can override this veto. So in summary, all the branches have equalized power due to the system of checks and balances. No branch is ever going to have greater power than the other. It's always going to be equalized.
Federalism. To even begin discussing what federalism is, you need to understand the history behind it. 1781, we are still fighting our war with Great Britain. We create the Articles of Confederation, be our first government, as the war is basically already over at this point. We were just in peace talks. The Articles of Confederation allowed a very large degree of autonomy between states. There was no central government. Well, there was, but it was very little. And this caused a lot of issues. We saw Shays' Rebellion. We saw just a lot of infighting between states. And eventually, the Constitution was made. But before the Constitution was made, there need to be discussions on how to make this new Constitution. And this is where people very heavily differed from each other. The Federalists believed a strong national government needed to exist, while the Anti-Federalists believed in the opposite. And federalism is what the Federalists believed in. Federalism is the idea that to have a truly secure government and a truly secure and stable nation, you need to have a strong government. This strong government means having a strong central government while also giving rights to the people. And examples of very prominent Federalists were James Madison and Alexander Hamilton, two founding fathers. Federalism is what our country was built on and is still what our country is built on today.